Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Neurodivergent podcast. My name's Danielle Sullivan, and I'm here today with my friend, Dr. Anne Elrod Whitney.
So here's what we're doing today. I'm here for this new podcast series. We're calling it Neurodivergent Community Q&A. And honestly, Danielle, it's because I have questions. Every time I meet with you and every time I engage with something at neurodivergent.com, I always learn so much, and yet I always have so many questions. Newsflash, I am not alone. I think I'm not the only one having questions. And so you and I are here today. We're just going to take up a question and answer it if we can.
We are not promising easy or tidy answers to anything, but we are neurodivergent people raising neurodivergent kids with tons of experience coaching and teaching and otherwise engaging in this stuff. So I think we have a lot to give to you.
Danielle, now I'm feeling nervous. Like, what if we don't have a lot to give? But I'll tell you one thing is that I found in life, even identifying the question is usually a huge step. So if nothing else, we're going to discuss some questions. And if someone wants to call it answers, say that's cool.
Hi, and welcome back to the Neurodivergent podcast. My name is Danielle Sullivan. I am your host and the founder over at Neurodivergent Coaching at neurodivergent.com. I'm here again with my friend, Dr. Anne Elrod Whitney. We've been doing this new feature for a little while called Community Q&A, where folks submit questions and we try to answer them. What's our topic today? What's our question today?
Recently, at Neurodivergent hosted a connection and community pop-up event. And one of the big topics that came up is one that I have worked through my whole life, and that is food as an adult. What do we do? So whether that's cooking, personally, I have big thoughts about dinners in the morning, but by the time evening comes, I just want to lie down and someone order me a pizza. Feeding children, that's a whole nother level. Planning about the food, eating the healthy food, just help me do food.
Yeah, that was one of the topics that came up in that group that I guess shouldn't have been surprising to me, but it was surprising. And people were sharing recipes and it was great. It was a great group. But it did come up, and it comes up in coaching a ton too. And I think it's because, like sleep, food is one of these things that we need to do, but it's kind of complicated to do it in a useful way, like in a way that achieves the results that you want, which are like feeling good and being as healthy as is reasonable for your specific. So it's kind of like a heavy, it's a heavy thing to make decisions about every single day.
Well, and it just keeps
really
happening.
tired.
It just keeps happening every day, multiple times a day. You're just faced with it again and again. And so, I don't mean to say that I don't like food. I love food. And I want to eat food that is pleasurable to eat, that is not too hard to cook, that meets my health needs and is fun. And I want food to be a thing in my family where we come together at the table. And yet I find the labor and planning to do that really hard.
Yeah. And so I'll just say today that I'll definitely be talking about the labor and the planning and sort of the executive function pieces of food, but we're not nutritionists over here. One thing I want to point out though, is that there is a moral component to food, right? A lot of us have these preconceived notions about what good food is and what good eating is. And especially if you're trying to feed your children, but also feeding yourself, some of the work we have to do is around figuring out, well, what do we believe about food? And what are we thinking about when we think of food? And sometimes the reasons that feeding kids is hard, for example, is because your kids like macaroni and cheese and chicken fingers, right? And French fries.
And that's all.
Which we've all been there. And then we get in our own heads and feel all this shame around what our kids are choosing to eat. And so I just, I'm not a therapist. Go talk to your therapist. But food is hard. It's legitimately, it's cultural. It brings up a lot of feelings. There's history and family in food. And we don't have time to talk about all that today. So just know that if you're dealing with it, if it's hard, it's real. I also just want to take a minute before we really dive in and just point you to some resources. So there is it's not, I guess it's technically an eating disorder diagnosis called ARFID, ARFID. It's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. It's super common in neurodivergent populations because of our sensory differences and lots of other things. And if you are somebody who yourself or has kids who are not eating a variety, are eating very few types of food, and especially leaning towards processed foods that are the same every time, as opposed to, fresh foods, which are slightly different every time. ARFID is something you might want to look at and talk to a doctor about. If you have children who don't eat a lot of different types of food. There are occupational therapists who work specifically with food, who are the people you want to talk to about supporting kids with RFID. So I just want to get that out of the way up front. I'll put some links down below for folks who RFID is pinging for if you want to get more information and then talk to like an actual medical professional about that. I think, from my perspective as a neurodivergent coach who has worked with a lot of different people, that there are two main obstacles with food for most people. The first bit is the sensory bit, right? That when we are feeling good, we can tolerate hopefully a wide range of flavors, textures, and like scents, smells, right? When we are not feeling great, when we're overwhelmed kind of in our bodies, we want to get rid of as much extra stimulus as we can. And that means a lot of times we do not want things that will be especially flavorful or have like sours or mints or like things that have big flavors. We do not want things that smell certain ways. We do not want certain textures. And so when we are overwhelmed emotionally or physically, our food palate kind of shrinks. And that's like it can be a problem sometimes, but it's also normal. And so there's the part of planning for days when you're not going to feel good and you need safe foods, right? Foods that you can eat regardless of your emotional or physical, I can't think of the word, like self. And then the second piece is the executive function piece, which is executive function is your planning, prioritization, understanding your feelings, and being able to think into the future and also break down topics. Like, so when we think of food, we think of like, the 800 ingredients that go into a meal, we get overwhelmed. We think of like, okay, well, if I put this on the stove now, when will it be done? And then when will I do this next thing? And those get all like clustered in our brains and it makes it really hard for us to plan. And then we get overwhelmed and then we don't want to eat. So those are the two like main, I guess, issues that when a client comes in with like, I need help making a meal plan, I can never do it. Those are the two things we think about
Yeah,
from a coaching
I've
perspective.
experienced both of those.
Yeah,
In my case, and I don't know if I'm the only one like this, but I
probably
experienced
not.
all of the second part.
Yeah.
Everyone's different, but everyone's kind of the same too, in a weird way. I have experienced all of the executive function part. I'm a parent. I was working full time all the way through my children's younger years, and had to deal with the problem of there has to be a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner every dang day, no matter what I'm doing.
Yeah.
How to deal. And then it's also, though, other people's food preferences, sensory things, and safety when you've got multiple people that you're trying to feed. I'm really glad you mentioned emotions because for me, I care a lot about pleasing everyone.
Yeah.
When I had both kids, I really cared that they would eat. So I felt like I've got to provide something they will eat. And then I'm also wanting to cater to different people's tastes. And then I'm also wanting to have food that meets my idea of what a good food is. And that was emotionally, honestly, too much and maybe practically impossible. So
Yeah.
what I have from my experience is some good strategies that I got for the second part, like the executive function part. But I'm not going to lie, a lot of it came from letting go of more of the first things, right? That once the child with a more limited range of foods got old enough to go to the fridge and get their own things,
Yeah.
right? I had to kind of let go of cracking the code. And it changed as the children have grown. And it changed a lot with divorce, where now sometimes I have kids, sometimes I don't. I have a partner now. What does that person want to eat? That is still very difficult. And it gets in the way of planning because I immediately think, oh, but they won't want that.
Yeah.
Or, oh, but they don't like that. Then there's the problem that I did make a plan, but now I'm tired. And the plan calls for action that I just don't want to do it. I'm like, forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all really good examples of executive function challenges, right? And I also just want to say that they're common across populate like if whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, executive dysfunction is common because like our brains didn't evolve to do the things we're doing is like the easy answer, right? Like none of us really evolved to be cooking 3 complex meals a day for 8 people and figuring out grocery stores and figuring out budgets and like all these things that come into choosing foods every day. You're doing more than you think you are every time you make a meal. You're holding more information and processing more information and doing more with that information than you think you are every single time. So of course it's fatiguing. Like it's, once you break it down, it's obvious why it becomes fatiguing.
Thank you. Thank you for honoring the challenge,
Of course. I mean, and I've been there too. It's a lot. So let me talk to parents out there and also people who have like partners or family members. If you are the main cook, the main person responsible for food, One of the things I really like is a saying from Ellen Satter, I think it is. I'll put a link down below. She does this thing called division of responsibility in feeding, which basically boils down to if you're the parent, you decide what goes on the plate and your child decides what to eat, right? And those are your divisions of responsibility. So my job as the parent is literally just to put food on the plate at certain times of day and offer that. And then the child's responsibility is to decide if they eat it or not, right? And there's like adjustments you make, right, for neurodivergent children. Like maybe two of the three things on the plate are safe foods, and one thing is a new thing. And maybe we encourage them to interact with the new food, like by touching it or smushing it or like playing with it in some way. But also, they can just ignore some of the food on their plate. I put barbecue chickpeas on my son's plate last night and he did not touch them, and that's fine. So I take them back and they go in the trash. And that's part of our understanding of him exploring new foods is that sometimes they get trashed, right? So the investment is, which was hard for me when I was a young mom because I was like, any food
Mealtime.
in the trash is like a waste of money, right? And we did not
Yeah.
have a lot of money. Now I view that as an investment in his learning to like different kinds of food because if we don't put new kinds of food on the plate for him to investigate, he will never eat new kinds of food. And so even when he declines one, it's still a win because he has looked at it, he has smelled it, and he has eaten around it. And those are still just going to be
Yeah.
older,
Yeah.
you know?
And, outside of, disordered eating
Yeah.
or issues with food that are more for a clinician, like a nutritionist, a psychiatric provider, sometimes your family doctor,
Yeah.
and certainly an OT who is strong around sensory issues. Most of those people are payable by insurance and have knowledge that we do not have. But just in terms of my issues around trying to please
Mhm.
everyone, a lot of it has been looking at the other people at the table and now that they're adults and teens and saying, well, I am giving a gift, which is
Mhm.
I have prepared this meal for you.
Yeah.
And what you make of it, if you go eat crackers after that, hey, that's on you. You're a
Yeah.
grown man or you're a grown woman.
There's a
I don't
vision
have
of
to.
responsibility. That's perfect.
Exactly. So it became important for me to teach my family to receive the gift in the
Mhm.
spirit in which I intended it. I made my kids learn to say thank you for this
Yeah.
meal. My former husband, I had saying thank you for cooking because a lot of my problem in preparing was this feeling that it was being rejected after all
Yes.
of the work.
That was me too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I took that personally. It felt like nobody cared that I was
Yeah.
working, and that, of course, is a toxic space to be in. So
Mhm.
appreciating that we are coming together and I have given a gift of a meal, and then also kind of owning that they may go eat candy afterwards,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes. And that's on yeah. I think there's a lot there, and that rejection piece is so important, especially for a neurodivergent population that many of us work so hard to create a food and then to have it rejected or even to reject it ourselves. Like, have you ever made something that you thought you were going to like, and then it comes out of the oven and you're like, and then you avoid it for a week and then it gets moldy and you throw it away, right? And I,
Often, I thought I was the only one.
no, and there's so many reasons that happens, right? And so, like you're saying, there's the gratitude of the gift. There's the self compassion around sometimes you can't actually predict what your body or your brain are going to do around certain foods, even foods you make for yourself. And I think there can be some resistance baked into having to feed yourself all the time. But like practically, a couple of things I'll just say really quick are first of all, not to harp on them too much, but the visual schedules, y'all. If you have a visual aid of any kind, and here's some examples. When my daughter gets overwhelmed about food choices, we'll often in the morning just say, "Can you make me a plate?" She doesn't want to think about what's going to be on that plate. It's like too much, immediate overwhelm. One way we've solved this is I just literally put stuff on a plate and she chooses what to eat. And sometimes she doesn't. And sometimes I make a really nice balanced breakfast. And sometimes she gets like a waffle and some dried cranberries. But at least then she's gotten some food and then she can make her own food decision. Another way we've done this is we've had just a list on the fridge of what everyone likes to eat. Right? I don't have to hold that in my memory anymore. I can go down the list and be like, oh, this child likes peanut butter and jelly and this child likes tuna fish. So I'll make them each a different thing. But now I know, like, I don't have to think about what I'm doing. I just look at the list and see what we have.
But is this like a piece of
Yeah.
paper on your refrigerator? Is it magnets? I mean, like, give me the
Yeah.
nitty
The
gritty.
practical. So we have in the past had a piece of paper on the fridge. I do have a piece. Well, right now we're moving, so it's not on my fridge. But traditionally, we have in our fridge a like printed worksheet thing that came. I wish if I can find the website, I'll put it down below. But like back when I was a very young mom, I was following the mom blogs, when mom blogs were like really in their prime. And somebody had created a printable like grocery shopping list for vegetarians because we're a mostly vegetarian family. And I literally just printed out and put it on the fridge because it helped me think through like what could I offer my kids? Like, oh, I could offer
Yeah.
them a fruit, I could offer them a vegetable, I could offer them a sandwich, right? Maybe
That
there's actually
reminds
like
me
a lunch printable. I don't even know now.
You're reminding me of a printable that was for cute bento box type
Yeah,
lunches,
like that
which
could
never
be
made
that.
cute lunches, but I liked having the little lists of what you could put
Yeah.
in them. And I used to do a lot of freezer cooking, but my freezer, I'm fortunate to have a huge freezer, like a separate freezer, but it is in the basement and has always been in houses I lived in. And I kind of forget what's in there. When I'm hungry and tired, I can't think what there
Yeah.
is, and it all sounds very
Yeah.
hard. So I had in the back of my notebook, I used to keep a list of what was meals that were in the freezer. So, and that was everything from a lasagna I had pre-made and frozen on some energetic day to one of those dump crock pot meals where it was
Yeah.
like a can of soup and some chicken
I
and
love
like
the
a
dump
bag of this or that.
meal.
I love those things. I
Yeah.
will tell you, my children did not enjoy food mixed together. And so that was problematic. But I learned a strategy. So remind me, I can
Okay,
tell you the strategy
I
about
will.
that. And then even just things like, oh, I have frozen French fries and I have frozen fish sticks. And I would remind myself that, oh, fish sticks and fries, that's a
Yeah.
meal. And then I can cut some fruit. So it was like a reminder to me of what we already had because, I would look at the fridge or something and I would just see these ingredients and I wouldn't see meat.
Yeah. And I'll just jump in really quick and say one of my clients, shout out, you know who you are, showed me a picture of her freezer. She has a chest freezer and she got a whiteboard marker and just wrote directly on the freezer what's
Ooh.
in there. And then when it's eaten, erases it from the freezer. And I'm sure you have to have like a certain kind of freezer for that to work to like test it.
Disclaimer, she's not buying anyone a new fridge or
No,
booking her a
no,
fridge.
no.
Don't go get your Sharpies.
You're responsible for your own markings on your freezer. However, to me, that was like genius because I'll just say up front, we tried to do that and I could not like, I have very poor working memory. I look in the freezer and cannot remember what's there for the time it takes me to write it down. And so I just have my own executive function block there. But to write it right on the freezer while the freezer's open was somehow doable for me. Just
That's
tossing
neat.
that out, but making yourself a map or a list of what's in there really, really helps.
That's really good news. Having that menu, it's for me, like, here's
Mhm.
what I know we can cook. And
Yeah.
then it's a thing I can put in my routine. So I'm kind of out of a routine and struggling in this area right now. But when I had younger kids and I was working full time, I was really on it. One way that I had success was that in the morning, at that time, I was using a plant that
Mhm.
had a little spot where you wrote what's for dinner.
Yeah.
So every morning when I was getting dressed for work and I was looking at what my first appointment was going to be, there was this blank asking me what was for dinner. And I could flip right back to my list of what I had
Yeah.
and I could just pick one
Mhm.
and like put it in the crock pot or put it on the counter or just know that I would be cooking fish sticks or whatever it is. That was really useful, just that prompt.
Mhm.
I'm only thinking of it now. Maybe I need that in my morning routine. It's
Yeah.
just that question, what's for dinner? So that and write it down on a whiteboard. That's smart.
Yeah. And I can say that for our family, I use this app called Plan to Eat. I think it's paid, but it's cheap. You can save recipes from blogs or from your cookbooks directly in that app with a picture. Every week, I go through and there's a little daily planner in that, and I can add the recipe into my Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Monday evening.
Yeah.
And then I can also scroll back and see what we did like last month or last week or whatever if I'm feeling particularly uninspired. But it helps because all my meals that I know our family mostly eats are in one spot. So I can just look at them all. And then I can think about, okay, well, what ingredients do I have? Or what do I need to like, how much energy do I need to have? Do I have a ton of meetings this day? And actually, this recipe is like
Yeah.
way too big, that kind of stuff. Cause it's all like in one place. And I'm sure there's tons of apps that do this. And I'm also sure you could do it in like a Google Calendar.
Yeah.
But it really helped me to have it in one place and to be thinking about like balancing the energy. The energy management is a part of this, right? Like on a day that I know I have a million things, maybe a crock pot meal is going to be better than like a fancy pie for dinner or something that I have to roll up the
Right.
for and stuff. And so,
Right.
because you will get tired. And I think that knowing your own like energy schedule is part of this too, right? Because if
Oh
you
my
have a
goodness.
ton of
Yeah.
energy at lunch, then maybe you want to pre-cook dinner at lunchtime while you're waiting for your soup to heat up or whatever. I had one client who prepared everything for the next day's dinner. So if there was
Yes.
chopping or like you had to cook some onions or whatever, they did it right after their dinner because that's when they had the most energy. And so again, being a little flexible and like you don't have to do it at a certain time. Like when makes sense
Right.
for you to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. That thing of looking ahead is not easy for me because, I mean, first of all, many of us struggle to even picture the
Yeah.
future. But also, in my case, when I look to the future, I imagine that I am a superhero. I
I know that
think,
feeling.
and in the morning, I'm always thinking that I'm going to be so great in the
Mhm.
evening. And it turns out, no, I'm never a superhero, and I'm really only energetic in the mornings. So
Yeah.
facing that reality, there are some things that I learned like that to do. One was that for a long time, when I made any dinner, I just made two.
Yeah.
So if I was making crock pot, I just made sure that there was enough to put half of it in a container.
Mhm.
And I would stick that container in my freezer with a piece of masking tape on it saying what it was.
Mhm.
And then bam, now I've got a freezer meal for another day. No extra work except for pouring it into a container.
Mhm.
If I roasted a chicken, I roasted two. If I cooked noodles, even just for noodles and sauce, I would go ahead and boil the whole pack of noodles or
Yeah.
the 2 packs. And I would just put the buttered or oiled cooked pasta in a baggie in my
Mhm.
refrigerator. Because then when some kid was tired and grouchy and was like, there's nothing to eat, or when I was tired and grouchy and I don't want to cook, I could go, oh, buttered noodles. And there it was.
Yeah.
So with no, again, no extra work. I didn't think, oh, time to pre-cook. I've done that and it's great, but freezer cooking as a big batch was too hard.
Mhm.
Just making
Yeah.
two of something, buying two of almost everything.
Mhm.
It is a way that I did that. And related to that, I always made lunch ahead of
Mhm.
times. For me now, it's a different version of the same challenge actually, because now I'm at home and I don't remember when to eat lunch. Um, for a lot of years, I had preschool kids. You had to send a lunch.
Yeah.
And then I had myself and a partner, both of whom were wanting to take our lunch to work because to eat lunch at work was to spend about $15 by the time it
Mhm.
was all said and done. So packing a lunch, some years on Sunday night, I had those little containers that they're pretty common now as meal prep containers. They have little pockets of different portions that don't touch each
Yeah.
other. Do you know what I'm
Yes,
talking
we
about?
have
I
those in
had a
my
big
kids' lunch boxes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a pile of those. It was not a fancy kid bento box. It was not starting over with new stuff. It was literally like Gladware
Mhm.
things from the grocery store. And then I just filled the pockets every night. So if I was cooking something that would work in there, this person has a microwave, this one doesn't, I would drop it in one of their compartments. Then I would just look on the shelf in the fridge. Are there some grapes? Okay, shove some in,
Too.
some kind of fruit, and I would put
Mhm.
it. I had a jar of applesauce I could pour in. I would put some pretzels in. I would put just cold pieces of deli meat in. It was kind of charcuterie for toddlers, but even for me,
And
and that
we're
worked really
still
well.
charcuterie
Yeah,
for toddlers. That's just because like, and this is maybe the time for the thing you mentioned earlier about that when kids don't like things mixed together, right? Like when
yes,
I'm feeling overwhelmed, I don't like things mixed together. And I do really like my food and I will eat a wide variety of food. And I like my
yeah.
soups and stews and kind of what is my partner calls them. I like soggy bread with mush on it. That's what I
Ooh,
like. So like I
that
like
does
my
not
soup.
sound good when you say
No,
it that way.
no, it doesn't. But that's what a lot of what I eat, right? As I like
Yeah,
my soup with some bread or some croutons or some crackers in it. Or I like my grits with like, some anyway, yeah, so you don't have to think it tastes good. But my kids are still in that phase of life where they mostly like separate things. And so a lot of their lunches are like ingredient lunches of like, here's some nuts
yeah.
and some dried fruit and a sandwich and some salad or some like crackers or whatever else I had around, right?
Yes. And
Yeah.
that reminds me of the hack that I was going to
Mhm.
mention was when I would make ahead like a food that was mixed, like a crock pot meal or whatever. I'm sure you've seen the strategy of giving them the deconstructed meal. For
Yeah.
example, let's say everyone's having a stir fry. Well, maybe you leave some of the rice plain
Yeah.
and you leave some of the broccoli out of the stir fry so that some people will choose ingredients and other
Mhm.
people will choose the fully cooked dish.
Yes.
Well, crock pot, which I did a lot of, and freezer cooking, which I did a lot of, it wouldn't work because everything
Mhm.
was already frozen. But what I realized is it's not that I have to separate it for them to eat right then. It's still that I'm touching lots of ingredients that they will eat if I
Mhm.
don't put it in this bag. So
Yeah.
I learned, maybe I was putting broccoli in a frozen beef with broccoli. I could just put some broccoli in someone's lunch kit. Maybe I had roasted a bunch of chicken and now I'm chopping it for chicken salad or something. I could just also put some of that in someone's lunch kit.
Mhm.
That really helped me with the lunch problem. And the other thing it did was that it made it where I could eat a sandwich. So one of
Yes.
my picky things is I cannot stand if the bread is at all soggy on a sandwich.
You
And a
don't like
sandwich,
soggy bread with stuff on it.
no, I like texture, nothing
Yeah,
soggy.
yeah,
So, it's hard if I wasn't going to have a microwave for leftovers. I also didn't want a sandwich. What was I going to eat?
yeah.
And the answer was chips. That
Mhm.
was what I basically was going to eat. Chips and granola bars. So yeah, what I learned to do was I had that compartment thing. I put the bread and the filling, meat or whatever in the big one, but
Mhm.
dry. And then I would put the different condiments in the little containers, like squish some of the mayonnaise, put the pickles in a little compartment. So everything was staying separate. And then I could build the sandwich and eat it. And it sounds like a small thing, but I got to eat sandwiches for lunch, and I still will not pack a sandwich in any other way. Even, egg salad. I would make the egg salad, but not put it on the bread. I also would do that for my kids. It sounds silly, but I probably saved $100 a month just doing that because I
Got a full
finally figured out
thing.
how to eat sandwiches.
I mean, this is something that comes up a lot as a theme, but it's like you have to be really clear in what the problem is that you're trying to solve, right? Is the problem actually that you don't like any sandwiches, or is it that the sandwiches get soggy? And if it gets
Right.
soggy, how do you solve that, right? And so being really like non-judgmental about what you see yourself doing and just kind of like logical, rational, right? About how do I solve this problem? It would save a lot. Y'all, we had so much to say about this topic that we recorded a monster of an episode. So I'm going to go ahead and split it up into two for you. Come on back next time for the continuation of this conversation about food, meal planning, and just feeding yourself here on Neurodiverging. In the meantime, you can find the transcript over on neurodiverging.com and learn more about me and Anne at neurodiverging.com or Anne's website, AnneElrodWhitney.com. Please remember, we're all in this together.